glad to extend a warm welcome to everyone here who joined us on our weekly show, the Tenpenny Files on Your Health. For the last 24 years, I've literally given thousands of interviews on information on all over the board, but mostly about vaccines. But as a board certified physician, an emergency physician with 12 years of training in a level 2 trauma center, there's so much more that we can talk about. So that's why I started this show, to be an educational program on your health. So today, before I introduce to you my special guest, who is Dr. Carole Liederman, known as America's Psychiatrist, talking about the recent release of her award-winning book, Lions and Tigers and Terrorists, oh my, showing us how to protect our children at a time of terror. We're going to take a quick break. You're going to find this really interesting and compelling information. We'll be right back.
Zeolite is a detox spray. We work specifically with a company called Touchstone Essentials. They are an incredible company. We've been working with them now for several years. And zeolite is a mineral that goes through your body like a one-way basket. It will clean out heavy metals such as arsenic and mercury, aluminum, cadmium, and it hooks onto those metals from a one-way perspective. So once it's bound, it goes out through your urine or your stools and doesn't get redeposited in other places. Everybody needs to have a detox product in their life, and this one is so easy to use and it's so safe. You can take it when you're pregnant, you can take it when you're nursing, you can give it to little children, you can even give it to infants, and quite frankly, I give it to my dog. I actually put a little bit of the zeolite in his water because until we all stop living in a toxic world, we all need to get some of those extra toxicities out, the heavy metals, the persistent organic pollutants, the things that are floating through the air, the different things that we come in touch with in our environment. And we are a big fan of zeolite from Touchstone Essentials. We've been a big fan of their products for several years. Go to drtenpenny.com/detox to get your first bottle of zeolite spray for $50 off.
Well, welcome back, everyone. Dr. Carole Liederman, known as America's Psychiatrist, is a board-certified Beverly Hills psychiatrist. She is also a best-selling and award-winning author of several books and has written chapters and forewords for several others. Dr. Liederman is a TV news talk commentator on today's headlines from the psychology and socio-political point of view. A 3 times honoree from the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences and the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences Daytime Emmy Awards, she is the host of a TV talk show, Dr. Carole's Couch. She has appeared on many mainstream television shows, including Oprah, Good Morning America, and many more. She's received her training at NYU Bellevue and Anna Freud's London Clinic. Dr. Liederman has served on the clinic faculty of UCLA's Neuropsychiatric Institute for years. Dr. Carole, welcome so much to the Tenpenny Files on Your Health. I really appreciate your time, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
So in the beginning of your book, you say that this book is intended to assist parents, teachers, and children to teach them about the care of how to cope with the threat of terrorism. You are, as a practicing psychiatrist, were you seeing and hearing these concerns from patients or from your parents in your practice that inspired you to write this book?
Well, let me start back a little further, because it was 9/11, 2001, that actually got me to go on this path where I call myself the terrorist therapist. I have been dedicating hours and hours, it's not even hours, years of my life actually, helping people cope with terrorism and trying to warn them about what the goals of terrorists are, where things stand. So I've written 2 books on terrorism. I do a podcast called The Terrorist Therapist Show. I'll tell you about, for 9/11, I've been doing, I created a music video, and I played it on a mobile billboard, a truck basically, and went around, had it go around New York and Washington, D.C.
Wow.
for the 3 years on the anniversary of 9/11. And then this past year, I actually went in the truck myself. I updated the video and I rode in the truck. Before that, it was, it was the pandemic and so on. So I didn't go in the truck myself. But this past 9/11 I did. And I also created for 10/7, Israel's 9/11. I created a music video, and I just recently rode in the truck for that. I rode in Los Angeles for the October 7th music video memorial. So I have been doing it. And before that, I think one of the first things that I did was I created an audio visual program for airlines. Because right after 9/11, everybody was afraid to fly. Most people were afraid to fly. And so I created this program that was played on domestic and some foreign airlines to help people calm down while they're flying and be prepared to for wherever they were going. So I've been doing a lot of things. And I also, the book that you mentioned, Lions and Tigers and Terrorists, oh my, How to Protect Your Child in a Time of Terror, that has won awards in Paris and in London, in addition to New York and Hollywood. And so I went to, Paris and London to get the award. And while I was there, I did a lot of speaking engagements and so on with the people there, because, England had its 9/11, that was 7/7 in 2005. And that was my first book, actually, Coping with Terrorism, Dreams Interrupted. I wrote it for the first anniversary of London's 9/11. And so I've been like doing things basically since 2001. I have been actively involved in helping people in Israel, by Zoom. And I plan to go there too to help them in person. So, in Paris had their terror attack, especially several, of course, and especially in 2015, they had their biggest attack, of stadiums and of the Bataclan concert hall. And so people in those places are very, have been affected by terrorism too, just like our 9/11.
I don't think that people realize how pervasive the problem is.
Tell me about it. Yes, that's right. And that is because our mainstream media kind of hides a lot of this from them. It is really very sad and unfair, and people are in such denial because they have been allowed to be by the media not covering all these things. Every day there is, in 2024, it's been this way for quite a while, but I'm just saying, like right today, as we speak, there are terror attacks happening all over the world. Paris, London, the UK, Germany, Belgium, Africa, all Israel, of course, all over the place. And we need to know about this because people need to realize that America we are more in danger today in America of having a terror attack than we were at 9/11.
Mm.
And so people need to be prepared for this. And it's very unfortunate that we aren't exposed to what's going on. You could say, well, maybe they don't want to scare us. We need to know. These are things that we need to know. And same thing for the book. For both books, but especially for the book about children, for children. It's for children and for anyone and for those who love them, parents, teachers. I'm not sure how much, I don't know if all teachers love them, but but anyhow, it's really showing the necessity, because these days in school, a lot of schools don't even teach about 9/11.
Wow.
It's just, they're just keeping it from the kids. And so, I was on, I've done a lot of media interviews about the book, well, about terrorism in general and about this book. And when I went to London to get the award for the book, and I spoke to people and so on, did readings and all that, I was on Good Morning Britain. And now this was at a time, this was in the book came out actually in 2017. So it won the award in England, I guess in 2018. And that was also when it won the Paris Award. Anyhow, when I was in England on Good Morning Britain, that was a time when there had just been a few years of terror attacks in London. And the women who were hosting Good Morning Britain, these two women, were they were all prepared for me. You know, when I came into the studio, I saw they had some of the pictures. Oh, yes, let me back up. Lions and Tigers, the first half of the book is for the grown-ups, as you mentioned, parents and teachers. The second half of the book is a picture book for kids. So it's
Right.
all about, well, you know, you read it. It's all
Yeah, I
about
did.
terrorism.
Yeah, and
You know,
it's got such a delightful cover on it too. You know, I'm going to take the blur
sure.
off here so that people can see. It's just delightful. You know, it really kind of, I'm sorry about my light here. Let me move this. Um, it's so people can really see it. And it's a book that's written for kids, about kids and for kids. So it really covers all of the spectrum there of adults and teachers and people that are educating, and that the back part of this that really is the picture book, you know, the picture book for kids is really something that you can sit and read to your kids. What is the right age, do you think, to start talking to kids about terrorism?
Well, 5 years old. And how I chose that is because that is when most kids go to school, at least by then. And that's when they would start hearing from other kids about terrorism and about, you know, like if parents have tried to keep it from their kids, they won't be able to keep it once they go to school, because other kids, you know, especially other kids who have older siblings and all that, so they're going to talk about it. And if your kid doesn't know anything about it, you know, they're going to be even more confused. But I was starting to say about this television show. So there had been attacks in London, numerous attacks, and there was no way that children in London or in England or the UK, you know, didn't know that there were terror attacks. But these women hosts said their first question was, you know, do you really think that it's important for kids to put these adult worries on them? You know, why should we talk to kids about this when you know, it's just adding to them. It's like hard for them to be kids if they hear about this. So it was good that they were challenging me, because it made me explain things even better. And I said, but I was sort of like dumbfounded at first, because it was like, hello, do you really think in these past years with all the, you know, I said something about it's on the telly, you know, I'm sure they've seen it. And so, you know, I mean, that's it, that you can't really hide. I mean, America has been very fortunate to not have had many attacks since 9/11. I mean, of course, there was the Boston Marathon bombing. There was the nightclub in Florida. There was an attack in Los Angeles, well, in California. There have been some attacks, but you know, nothing, of course, as big as 9/11. I mean, I guess the next one would be the Boston Marathon. But so there hasn't been anything in America that has made parents feel like they, you know, there was on the television all the time where parents would feel that they had to say something. But this period of we've kind of been lulled into a false sense of security, because in France and in England, London, especially, well, not just London nowadays, it's really all over the UK, and there, and in Belgium, and as I was saying, in Germany, you know, they have allowed in radical Islamist migrants over the years, since 2015 especially. And now, you know, there are so many of them, and they are really acting totally, they know that they can do things and not really be prosecuted for it. I mean, they may be arrested, but then a lot, just like in America, a lot of them get lighter sentences. And so they're not so afraid, especially because of the numbers. You know, they can have maybe 4 terrorists to 1 policeman.
Right.
So it's really a dangerous situation, and America needs to look at that, because that is what is heading here.
Absolutely. Absolutely, it is. And it's interesting because one of the things that you point out in your book, I think is that was really good was about being truthful. I mean, don't try to like soft pedal something and then your kids go to school the next day and hear a different story that may be closer to the truth, because the kids are a little bit older and they're at least watching television. Maybe you're not. And so to tell them the truth about what's happening, I think that we underestimate the ability of our kids to be able to assimilate and understand what's going on.
Yes, and we underestimate how, like that they may be hearing these things even at home, or they may be seeing, you tell them, oh, well, don't worry about it. There's nothing to be worried about. But they can see that you're worried, that you're feeling
Right.
upset, that maybe you don't go out as much as you used to, things like that. They pick up on these things. So you have to be truthful, not to say things to get them to be so scared they stay under the covers all day, but explaining things. I mean, you were probably surprised. I should say, were you surprised at how some of the things that I did explain, like about terrorists wanting us to believe in their God and that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that yeah, I read all through all of that. And I think that being able to explain to your kids is really, really important. And I think the other reason why it's a little challenging here in the US is because we're such land mass wise, we're such a big country. So when something happens in New York, it doesn't feel like it touches you in Kansas, and so when you've got a smaller country, you may even know people in
Yes.
other parts of the area. So it doesn't quite affect us as much, but I agree with what you said, particularly about the influx of illegals and things in this country. When is this all going to start? One of the things that I thought was really interesting was when you said about in your book about what is the best way to reassure your child when they say, I'm scared. And there's different ways to conveying that to different age groups. Why don't we talk about that a little bit? When your kids said, I'm scared, if they're 5 versus when they're 10, how do you help to assuage that?
Yes. Well, also a lot has to do with not just the age, but the psychological maturity of each child, and their experiences. But you can, for example, with the child who's 5, one of the things that I have is one of the questions that they would have is, what is a terrorist? So one of the pictures for the children is and the answer is, a terrorist is like a big bully on the playground who wants you to do what he wants you to do, and if you don't, he wants to beat you up. um so that would be 5, but it may be 6 and 7, and again, it depends. But then for an older child, you need to get into it a little bit more, and you can explain, I mean, you can explain what there is, like if it's in the United States, what is happening to try to protect you. We have the police, we have the first responders, we have the president, if uh all these different people, elected officials, let's put it that way, elected officials who are also supposed to be, and the FBI and the counterterrorism organizations that are working every day to protect us, to find out, to foil plots. I mean, that's another thing. You can talk about the helpers. For example, there was just a plot just recently. There was a plot made by an Afghan man who was brought into the country when we what's the word, when we surrendered, to Afghanistan. And they brought over 80,000 Afghans. Now, some of those Afghans were supposedly helpful to America. They acted as translators and things like that. But 80,000, there was no time in that chaos to vet everybody. So not all the 80,000 were friendly. There were some terrorists in there. And now they're spread all over the United States. So there was one Afghan just recently who made a plot to have a terror attack on election day. And he had a co-conspirator who was also an Afghan, but a minor. And they had bought guns, and they had these plans to do something on election day. Oh, yes, to do something on election day, such as going to a poll or doing something just to make an attack on election day. And the FBI foiled the plan. They they haven't described exactly how they did it, but it had something to do with when they were trying to buy the AK-47s. And so, there are stories like that. There are lots of foiled plots that don't all make the news, but so you could tell stories to children who are a little older like that. And the interesting thing with this man is that a day after he was arrested in America, in Oklahoma, a relative of his, and another Afghan, was arrested in France, and he had a plot to not necessarily on election day, because they don't they don't have the same election day, but he had a plot. He was going to attack a stadium or a mall, and so they arrested him. Presumably they when they found the one in America, they saw their communications talking about their respective attacks that they were planning. So you can talk about the positive. Yes, there are people foiling these. See, the other thing is that, okay, America has been fortunate, as I was saying, to not have any major attacks since 9/11, except for some of the ones that I mentioned. But there are other ways that kids hear about terrorism. For example, the Taylor Swift concert that was canceled just recently in Vienna because there were two teenagers who became radicalized. They were from Vienna, but they became radicalized over the internet, and they had planned to attack the concert venue that Taylor Swift was going to come to. And fortunately, that plot was foiled also by actually in America. It was the American counterterrorism organizations that found out about that plot, and that was pretty amazing. And then they told Austria about it. But there was a 19-year-old boy, and he worked at a company where there were metal parts, and he was making a bomb he stole those, and he was making a bomb, and then he was going to put police lights on his car because he was going to drive right up to the entrance of the concert hall.
Wow.
And he had knives, and so he was going to do all of this, and he expected to die be a suicide bomber. And then the 17-year-old, his friend, he actually got a job at the concert hall. He was going to be part of the security in the concert hall. So,
Wow.
Whether he was going to use knives or whatever he was planning, but he was going to be inside and the other one was going to be outside. So, how much detail, I don't know that all the kids, teenagers, found out about, but I mean, Taylor Swift is a big deal. You always hear news about her every day. I don't know why, but we are bombarded by news about Taylor Swift. And so of course kids are going to hear about that and, have some feelings about that. So you can't hide it from kids.
No, you can't really hide it from kids at all. What do you do with children, or how do you differentiate if they're acting out due to fear and insecurity? I mean, how do you identify that, and then how can parents best address that?
Well, there are different ways, 4 major ways that children can react to to hearing about or terrorism. Mad, bad, sad, and scared. Uh,
Mm,
so let's see. So and the other important part, besides that parents need or grown-ups need to realize, besides understanding that kids know more about what's happening than we realize, the second part of it is that it's the most important thing is to get them to express their feelings about it. Now, they can't express their feelings if you don't talk about it with them. So that's why talking about it is the first thing, and then getting them to express their feelings. Now, of course, depending upon how old the child is, that will, and in their psychological mind, their psychological state of being, that would determine how well they're able to express their feelings. So it can go from either emojis, like for little kids, who might not have the words to express exactly how they're feeling, to drawing things, getting kids to draw pictures, just anything. In psychology, actually, I just used this the other day, and for a case, I do expert witness work. And so there was a case, a custody case. And there's a test that you give where you ask kids to draw a house, a tree, and a person. And you can tell so much from how they draw that. So for example, in this example, it was two little boys. And so they drew their mother's house as a very warm, friendly kind of thing. And they drew their father's house in black and very, scratchy, very, they made like, it wasn't really well defined. It was just very scary, actually, the way they drew it. So, and a person, you can see how they feel about themselves, how they feel about other people. So drawing, even when you don't give them those specific directives, drawing things, how do you feel today? Here's a paper and here are crayons. Tell me how you feel today. You can see so much by that. If they draw a sun, the usual sun in the corner, right? A sun and flowers and all that, they're feeling pretty well usually. If they start drawing clouds or rain or darkness, they're not feeling well. Now you can get more sophisticated or less sophisticated, but those are some of sort of the basic kinds of things. Asking kids about their dreams. A lot of kids have nightmares about terrorism. So ask them to tell you their dream or to draw their dream. So scared, a lot of times they won't want to go to school. They won't want to leave you. Much more separation anxiety, sad, depressed, staying in their room because they're sad, not because they're scared to go out. Mad and bad, mad, having temper tantrums, throwing their toys around, those kinds of things. And bad is not that they are bad, but it's just sort of a mixture of feelings that are sort of a muddle. And you can't really, pick out a specific one, but just they're feeling bad. So there are different ways to, you can play with puppets. You can get them to, you can play with toys, like take two toys. You're the puppy dog, they're the cat, and just play games like that. There are different ways to elicit how they're feeling. But the main thing is getting them to feel comfortable talking to you about how they're feeling.
Yeah, I really like those 4 letters: mad, bad, sad, and scared, because that's easy to remember for a parent or a teacher, somebody who may be listening to this, that if you're seeing a child that you've had in school for a while and they're acting out of their normal character, are they acting mad, bad, scared, or sad? That gives them something to work with. And I love the drawing pictures. That's just something that anybody can use at any age. That's really super good. It's really good. So this will be a good place. We're going to take a really quick break here right now this morning. Today or this evening, we're talking to Dr. Carole Liederman, known as America's Psychiatrist, talking about her recent multiple award-winning book, Lions and Tigers and Terrorists. Oh my. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. There's more to come.
We also have an apparel line on our store that has just the best things. In fact, I go and shop at my own store. I mean, I really do go and buy stuff out of my own store. They have t-shirts and sweatshirts and cups and mugs and totes. We've got a great designer. We're always adding new things all the time. And either one of those 2 product lines, either our private label supplements, our Opti line, the white bottles with the green leaves on it, or with the apparel store, and they're 2 separate stores. They do not have a single shopping cart. It's like you go in one store and get your groceries and you go to the other store and get your shoes. Well, these are 2 separate stores, but you can use the same affiliate code. If you use the code podcast, when you go to the checkout, you can get 10% off on everything you buy every time you go to the store.
Well, welcome back, everyone. Carole, in your book, you have a section called How to Raise a Happy, Healthy Child, How to Raise Happy, Healthy Children in a Time of Terror. Then you list 88 actions that people can take right now. I want to just talk about a couple of those. We certainly, obviously, don't have time to go through all of them, but I think the idea of your guidance that you give about television, I think is really, really good. About no child should have a television in their bedroom. What do you think about just children watching television overall?
Well, you know, I think I was saying that like children less than 5, in other words, children who aren't going to school yet, it would be better not to try to not have them be exposed much to television. Children in general, I mean, the problem is these days, and it's even worse with video games, especially violent video games. That's become even more of a problem than television. And of course the internet, but violent video games. The problem is that that children who spend so much time uh, playing violent video games, or even just, even, well, especially violent, but even just sort of wasting their time on a screen, whether it's television or I mean, there are some good, let me put a caveat, there are some good programs on television, there was Sesame Street and all of that, and Mr. Rogers. um, and even some cartoons, they're harmless, it's okay. But a lot is not okay. And the thing is that when children spend time just staring at a screen, and especially if they play video games with their, where they actually are acting out with they have a hand in literally a hand in killing people, in the game and so on. Um, that makes, first of all, studies have shown for decades that the more violent media a child consumes, the more aggressive they become. That's number one. And what they should be doing, and the thing that not enough kids are doing these days is, I mean, there used to be a time when we would go outside, we'd come home from school and we'd go outside and play with our friends. Remember those days? And
Absolutely.
and
It's like, just don't get in trouble and be home in time for dinner, right?
exactly. And family dinner, which is another thing that's missing today. That's the time when you can talk about things like terrorism, or like, how'd you do in school today? Is something upsetting you? Anything, not just terrorism, but like, did you have a fight with your best friend? But those were things those were things that were sorted out at the dinner table. And kids felt like they were nurtured more, and it would be okay if they told their parents what went wrong in school today. Um, so so now what's not happening enough today is parents arranging for after school activities.
Mm.
Like, and it doesn't have to be super expensive. There are places in the community, in the YMCA or the community center of some sort, where they have different classes that aren't that expensive, music, dance, art, baseball, basketball, getting your child after school, not just coming home and sitting in front of the television or sitting in front of the video games, but to be engaged in something that will help them for their life, be productive, learning skills. And parents need to make the effort to do more of that. And rather than just letting giving their kids up to to whatever the screen is going to send them.
You also say one of your suggestions is using a globe or going to museums.
Yes.
How do these help, and how are these engaging to your kids?
Yes, using a globe is very helpful because you can show them where you are and where the latest terror attack is, and they can see that it's not that close to where you are. That is very comforting. Just that, oh, they're on that side of the globe. Okay. Not that that's foolproof, but at least it's comforting to an extent, because it's very confusing for kids to know where these things are taking place. And then what was the other one that you said? Oh,
How about
museums.
museums?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
museums.
Museums. There are lots of things that parents can teach kids going to museums. First of all, looking at different artworks that come from different times in history. Maybe some of them are reflecting some traumas that people were dealing with in history, or just very looking at the beauty in life, not just looking at, evil people doing horrible things like terror attacks, but seeing that there's all this beauty in life. Also reading books with kids that talk about heroes,
Mm.
things like Anne Frank, of course, even things like and and Ann Keller, right? I'm forgetting about the blind girl who Ann Keller.
Um, Helen Keller.
Helen Keller, there we go. I knew something
Yeah.
was wrong with Anne.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
Helen Keller.
Helen Keller. Yeah.
Helen Keller, how she was blind and you would
And
think
deaf.
what?
And deaf.
Yes, and you would think that she wouldn't be able to enjoy anything in life. And then you see how she she overcame this, that, with strength, with willpower, she was able, and of course with a good teacher, she was able to overcome this and actually have a very good life. So some of these heroes, whether you read about them or you go to movies about them, or look up movies online, but find things about heroes, people who overcame horrible circumstances, and then that can encourage them, no matter what happens, that you would be able to do that too.
When do you make the decision, or how do you make the decision to take your children for professional help?
Yes. If with this mad, scared, sad, and bad, if they are that way for a day or two, you just kind of have to try to have to first of all acknowledge it, try to get them to talk about how they're feeling. But then if this goes on, also if you try to get them to tell you why they think they're feeling that, they won't necessarily know why. But I mean, if they're scared, though, they might be able to say, well, I saw this thing on television about a terror attack somewhere. But but if it goes on, if whatever they're feeling continues, if it goes on for like at least a week, or if it's beginning to disrupt their life, like for example, if they were an A student and now all of a sudden they're a C or a D student, you know, you need to get professional help. Maybe they won't tell you what they're feeling or why they're feeling it, but so you need them to get evaluated at least by a psychologist or a psychiatrist, and who would then be able to, they would perhaps more likely, once the rapport is established, they would more likely perhaps tell them how they're feeling. Like they don't want to worry mommy and daddy. I mean, that's part of it too. Sometimes they don't want to say what they're feeling because they don't want their parents to worry about them.
We're in I think that's really, really important for the people that are listening to this to know when do you draw the line? Because I think that there's some boundaries in there. Some people run too quickly. They don't try to like work it out within the family. And then there's people who don't go soon enough. So I think that giving some guidelines like that is really important. I think that was good. In this very politically driven hot button period of time that we're in right now, leading up to this election, which has caused such divisiveness in our country, and there's so much going on. How do you talk to you could call that a form of terrorism, I think, of what's happening. How do you discuss politics with your kids?
That will depend upon what your politics are, what you want them to believe. And sometimes it's hard, like for teenagers, unfortunately, kids are being taught in some schools by some teachers, they're not being taught accurate history. They're being taught things like to hate America, that America is a big bad country and it did all these bad things, and it's really growing. It has been growing. Kids who go out and, well, we see at the colleges, who are out there protesting, some of whom are anti-Semitic, all of that. And so how, so it's hard not to provide so you may find that your politics are one thing and your kids surprise you, and they tell you they don't agree with you, and they tell you, oh no, this is bad and that's bad and this person is bad for this reason and that, and it can be shocking to some parents, because it's like, where did this child come from? I thought I knew my child. So, what you can do is, and the problem is with politics, it's like, it's hard, it's hard to show them when people feel so strongly about something and they've been taught to believe that, in school, it's hard to get them to see the other side of it, but you have to try. You have to, I mean, not argue with them, but show them things like for example, look at, like, let's say the candidates, whichever one you plan to vote for. You can show them things that one of the other candidate has done. What have they done so far, that you don't think is good, or what have they done that is good? And if you can show your children, like, don't treat them like, oh, well, they won't understand. If you can show them things that really make sense, and not push it too much, but like, another thing is asking, well, where did you get that idea? Where did you get that idea? You know, um, because that's interesting to know. And then you can try to get them to see the other side of it. For example, with terrorism, and I'm trying not to. Why don't see? I've been talking a lot about my podcast this morning. In fact, I did a podcast. I do the Terrorist Therapist Show, and so I talk about whatever the current situation is with in terrorism. So today I talked about October 7th leading us towards nuclear war, and I talked about the election, and I talked about how you have to look at what each of not just the president, but when you vote, like for your mayor or your governor or the people you send to Congress, look at their background, look at their history. What have they done in regard to terrorism? Are they tough on terror? Or do they, do they protest for Hamas? So you need to look at these things and vote accordingly, for all the different slots that are open.
Yeah, I think that's really true. I mean, somehow we think that when we vote, the only election or the only vote that's important is for president, and we forget about our mayor and our city council and our school board and our school board and our sheriffs and and our judges. These are the people. These are the people that actually rule our life. What
Yes.
goes on out there in Washington, D.C. is sort of something we watch on television. But the people, the judges and our city council and, school board members and things like that are locally. So I think you're absolutely right about doing a little bit more homework. Who was it that said we get the government we deserve? And I think that we've been asleep at the switch for a while, thinking that everybody that goes down to Washington, D.C. or goes over to be the mayor of our city is doing everything in the best interest of us and our community. And
Yes.
that doesn't always turn out to be true. Well, Carol,
Yes.
are coming down on the end of our last few minutes
Okay.
here, and I've really, really enjoyed this conversation. What would you like to make sure that our listeners and our viewers, because this will go out to a lot of people. What would you really like to leave them with here about your book, this Lions and Tigers and Terrorists Oh My, or your other books or your shows, and how can we best follow you?
Well, the best place to see everything is my website, terroristtherapist.com.
Very good.
You can see that I was mentioning about videos for 9/11 anniversary and for October 7. You can see the videos on the website. You can hear my podcast. You can also hear the podcast on wherever podcasts are played, can be gotten. And articles and videos and so on in general. Yes, of course. I think I'd like people to wake to start. Well, if you see the videos, you can realize why we need to wake up. And, even the son of Hamas, I have the son of Hamas quoted in these videos, because the son of the founder of Hamas quoted, he says some really wise things. I mean, I've been telling people for years that terrorists are here, but it's never as true as it is now. And if you don't believe me, I'm just a I'm just a psychiatrist. But you should certainly believe the son of the founder of Hamas, because he's trying to warn us also. And yes, of course, I want you to buy my book, because don't wait until there's a terror attack on your corner. Get your children prepared now. What about the next concert that's canceled because of a terror attack that's planned?
Yeah, for sure. Forewarned is forearmed, as they say, if you know ahead of time and you've, at the very least, you've found a way and you've used a tool, which is what I think of your book is a very good tool to start to open those conversations, to keep those dialogues open so that if and when the time comes, that path has already been tread
Right.
and you're not starting from zero. So I want to thank you so much, Carole, for being with us tonight. I know you're super, super busy and you've got lots of things that you're doing. We will all go to, I've been to your website. It's very well done, but it's very busy. You do lots of things. There's lots of things that are available there. So I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight. I want to thank everyone else who joins us here every week on the Tenpenny Files on your health. So with that, I want to close out with one of my favorite verses from the Bible. I close all my podcasts with, whether they are live or pre-recorded, which is Romans 12:12. Rejoice in hope, be patient in trouble, and be persistent in prayer. So until the next time, we'll see you next week, same time. Carole, thank you again so much. And thank you for writing this really delightful book. It deserves all the accolades and all the awards that you've gotten. And I hope to see you again sometime. And to everyone else, have a great week, everyone. We'll see you here next week at the same place, same time. Good night, and God bless.
In a time when truth is censored, one name stands out: Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, the relentless seeker of knowledge and defender of freedom. Explore groundbreaking findings at drtenpenny.com. Ignite your mind with riveting podcasts, explosive articles, research-driven Substacks, webinars, ebooks, and more. In an era plagued by environmental toxins and vaccine-related exposures, Dr. Tenpenny has expertly crafted a selection of safe detox protocols that facilitate profound healing at a cellular level. It's time to cleanse, rejuvenate, and restore your body's vitality. With heart damage on the rise, Dr. Tenpenny introduces nationwide ECP therapy to repair hearts and achieve optimal health. Seize the opportunity and embrace the wealth of resources, information, and health recommendations awaiting you at drtenpenny.com, and become a Tenpenny podcast member to join our mission in the quest for uncensored truth, the health of our nation, and medical freedom.